Hello, everybody. Welcome. So it looks like right now we've got Little Lone Prepper and Hello Tofu. Welcome to both of you. Glad to see you. So the announcement just now goes out that we have a live. Ooh, my T-shirt showing. That we have a T-shirt. That we have a live going. So we'll wait a minute or two for those people to come on. So we are finishing up this evening with Dr. Bradley's book, the Handbook for Family Disaster Preparedness for the Family. And it's a great little book. I really enjoyed it, or a great big book. And I think my disappointment of everything with this book is what we're going to be talking about this evening. And that is chapter 19 is about EMP and CME, coronal mass ejections. And then chapter 20 is basically trial by fire. So that's putting your practices into practice with a whole bunch of phenomenal checklists that he gave us, as well as he gave us some scenarios. And what I think I might do at some point in the future is, if we don't have a guest for a Monday evening, then what I may do is take one of these scenarios and we'll talk it through. So I'll read the scenario here on the live. Hello, Prepper, Patriot Prepper, and Mitch, welcome. So I'll read one of the scenarios and Pat, good evening. I'll read one of those scenarios from chapter 20, and we'll practice on those and get your opinions on how you would react to it and your suggestions and everything else. Hello, Butch, welcome. So one of the things that I strongly encourage on the channel, for those of you who might be new, is I encourage you to interact with each other. This is a community. We're here to support and help each other. Please be kind, polite, and respectful to each other. And as long as you do that, then I won't have any problems, and neither will my moderators. I have the absolute best moderators on YouTube. The other thing is, what you'll notice happening here sometime as we get into the discussion is my moderators are going to click on the three dots next to your name, and it says go to channel. Then they'll go to that channel. They're going to click on your website, or I'm sorry, your YouTube site, and then they'll post that back in chat along with how many subscribers you currently have. Then if somebody subscribes to your channel, they're going to put down their subscriber numbers. So let's assume that somebody has 4,211 subscribers. You go to that channel and subscribe. Then all you have to do is say, hey, I just subscribed to you, 4,212. Okay. And that way we're trying to help each other grow each other's channels on an ongoing and consistent manner, because we do want to support each other as much as possible. Butch, wow, Colorado, you make me jealous. I couldn't afford to live there if I wanted to. We were thinking about moving away from here, from the Central Texas area. And so my wife has been doing some investigating on places to go. Colorado is not one of those affordable places. Of course, growing up as a kid, I always went to Cloudcroft, Ruidoso every weekend. It was about an hour and a half drive from El Paso. And so I would drive up there. I love that area. And we would love to live up there too. But once again, the price of homes is just unbelievable. Well, hello, and everybody. And let's see if we can't get to this summary. And then after doing the summary, I want to kind of open it up. But in chapter 19, we're talking about EMP and CME. And so that's electromagnetic pulses and coronal mass ejections. The great thing about these two subjects is the balloon that we've had for the past couple of days. And we're right now in solar cycle 25. So we do have some coronal activity going on. And we've had a couple significant coronal mass ejections. And as a matter of fact, we had one X class here just last week. But, so that's something you have to prepare for. The net effect of both of them basically are high impulse waves of electromagnetic interference. Or so, it could be electricity, could be magnetic. There's one and the same, basically. that will wipe out certain items. And so one of the things that he does, Doctor, now remember the author of this book is the EMP expert for NASA. So he designs all of the anti-CME equipment that gets put on the space station and our spaceships and in our aircraft and stuff like that. So that's why an aircraft flying through the air can get hit by a lightning bolt and still survive. It's because the EMP protected devices that are on board the aircraft. And so anyhow, he's talking about the different types of weapons. So a low altitude nuclear will probably have the greatest effect in the 3 hertz to 1 gigahertz range. So that's basically the electromagnetic spectrum as we know it. Remember, 3 hertz to 30 hertz is HF, 30 hertz to 300 hertz is VHF. That's where you're going to find most of your radio communications is in those 2 channels. Then so VHF, we used to have channels 1 through 13 on a dial type of a television, and that was VHF. And then UHF, channel up to channel 64, I believe it was, that was UHF. So UHF goes from 300 megahertz to 3,000 megahertz or 3 gigahertz, whichever way you want to look at it. So that's kind of where those communications are. So a low altitude burst would affect the 3 hertz to 1 gigahertz, the whole radio spectrum, with a medium area of effect, probably a 1 to 10 mile radius. It would have a very high maturity, and it would have to be detonated below an altitude of 25 miles. So a high altitude nuclear is also going to be very wideband, and it's going to have a high field strength, somewhere between 10 to 50 kilovolts per minute at the surface. And it's going to have a larger area of impact, and that's going to be probably about a 1,000 mile radius. So that's high as well. It has to be detonated at altitude between 25 and 250 miles. So it's got to go up higher. So here's one of the things, here's a general rule that we're going to use. The smaller the blast, the lower the effect, okay? The higher the blast, the higher the effect. That just makes pure common sense. Now then, think of it. If you take a glass of water, okay, and just dump it out right there in front of you on the table, then a little bitty area is going to get affected. If you take a bucket of water and pour it out right there on the table in front of you, then that area is going to have a concentration that's greater, but it still only affects that little bitty area before it starts dripping off your table. Now, if you take that same cup and you go up and you hold it over the table and then pour it down, it's going to splatter and have a greater effect as it comes down in a cone and as it splatters all over the place. And the same thing, if you take a bucket and put it, and then you stand on a step ladder and pour the bucket of water on top of the table, think of how that water is going to dissipate as it's coming down and then how it's going to splatter and affect everything around it. So that's the basic dynamics if you want to think about how an EMP would work. And of course, the CME is a coronal mass ejection that's coming from the sun. One of the things, if you go to Suspicious Observer's website, when he gives his daily updates, let me see if I put him in here somewhere. There he is. If you follow him, if you subscribe to him and follow him, when he does his daily, and he goes through several different variations, different filters of the sun to look at all the coronal mass ejections that are happening. But if you take a look at, he always has the Earth relative size to the sun. I mean, it is a pinhead on a basketball. And so one of these coronal mass ejections doesn't have to be that big to really have a dramatic effect on us. Oh, hello, Tofu. Don't worry about it. Do what you can, and that's all you can do. Don't let things like that bother you. I know that you're doing the best that you can, and I appreciate it. So then we talk about electronic damage, and so now we want to talk. So think about it this way: if I am throwing a ball to you, okay, and you're standing sideways to me and looking this way, and the ball's coming over here, and you have your mitt out, what are the chances of you catching it? Okay, slim to none. Well, that's the same thing with polarization. So anytime you have an electromagnetic field, it's got a polar field, okay, and around that field. So in order to be best caught, it has to be caught by an antenna that has the same polarization. So if you have this polarization and this antenna, when the two of them meet, it picks up the greatest amount of electromagnetic energy, or it's most susceptible to picking up the greatest amount of energy. And that's called a vertical polarized signal. Okay. Now, if you have a vertical polarized signal and you have a horizontal polarized antenna, like a wire on your car, the wire in your house, okay, and they are pointing. So this wire, the long way, is this way, and it's pointing towards this coming this way. Your chances of it being affected are lessened. Does that make sense? Now, remember, this is the width. So you got the height, you've got the width. Okay, so we had this tip, and it's coming this way. So, that tip is got very little impact of that electromagnetic flux. Now, what happens if we have the vertical polarization, horizontal polarization, but the wire is this way, and then the field is coming like this? Okay, now you've got greater exposure because you're perpendicular to the oncoming wave. So there are a lot of things that have to happen sequentially in order for an electromagnetic current from either an EMP or a CME to damage your equipment. The experiences we know about are called Carrington effects, and they were back in the days of the Morse code when we had everything on telegraph wires. And so it fried the telegraph wires. Okay, so the coronal mass ejection came in opposite, so the wave coming in like this, and then you've got this like this, and they hit like this, and so it burnt it. That's our experience with EMP. The most recent experimentation, and J.J. Johnson, who I interviewed a week ago Monday, he just did a fantastic video, and it's 10 myths you may have heard about nuclear detonations. And he kind of gets into the EMP part of it a little bit. But if you're far away, okay, so let's say that the EMP goes off over Nebraska, and I'm here in Austin, Texas, my chances of being affected by that EMP is less than somebody who lives in Oklahoma City, who is closer to the point of detonation. So that's another one, of course, is it's going to dissipate its strength as it goes out in distance. A lot of things to take into consideration. It may not be as totally electronically devastating in the most recent papers that we've seen as it has been projected in a lot of the movies and things that you've seen or read about. So just some words, about the more recent things. So let me put up another fantastic site that I'm going to strongly recommend to you. And that's the author of this book, Dr. Bradley, and he has his own YouTube channel. He does a lot of this explaining in a more technical way on his YouTube videos. And so here is his YouTube channel, Arthur T. Bradley, PhD, and he calls himself EMP Doctor. He also has a website where he puts out fantastic information, and I strongly recommend it. So now let me see what else we got here. Impact of a high EMP attack. So he's saying that probably electrical power, there will be damage to the power grid components, widespread loss of commercial electrical power. Telecommunications will have damages. The financial systems, of course, if we have problems with power going to the banks, then they won't, and we have problems going to communications, then credit card transactions, memory banks as far as your financial records and everything else will be gone, which is why I don't do any electronic type of banking where let's say you can have a gold IRA, okay, but it's all in their hands and you have an electronic receipt that you own that gold. Well, if the grid goes down, there's no way you can get that gold, and nobody else is going to be able to be willing to barter or trade for it. I was involved with a company called Carrot Bars, and they still owe me $250 and 21 grams of gold for transactions that we did 2 years ago, and they were supposed to ship it to me, and they still haven't done it. Of course, now I believe the German government has them under investigation, but that gold I own is in their hands in Stuttgart, Germany. It does me no good here in Austin, Texas. That's one reason why you need to get some cash out of your checking or savings account and keep it where you live as well. Petroleum and natural gas, of course, there won't be anything pushing. There won't be any pumps working. The pumps pushing the gas through the system won't be working. Now, one that might work for a very short while are going to be the water towers and the water and what they call water. What do they call those? Standpipes. And that's just basically a big round pipe in the ground. And so they have a smaller tube going up that has an electrical pump, and they pump the water up into that big tank up top. And then all that pressure from the water being higher than where you're using it, combined with the pressure of the water on top of it, forces it down. You're going to have water maybe for a day or two after an EMP strike, but you're not going to have it for much longer than that. Transportation is questionable. We know for sure that, that's a misnomer. We don't know for sure. Odds are better that vehicles which operate with points and plugs are probably going to have a better chance of withstanding an EMP or CME than do the modern electric injection systems. How's that for a statement? So the chances of an old points and carburetor type of a system surviving are far greater than an electronic ignition system. There we go. That's how I want to say that. Likewise, food. You aren't going to have any of the processing plants working. You aren't going to have, you won't have, once the tractors run out of fuel, once the trucks run out of fuel, getting whatever the tractors were, or combines or thrashers were getting from the fields, you aren't going to have a way of getting those to market. Same thing with milk, eggs, all that kinds of stuff. You're not going to have a way to either collect it or to distribute it. Water purification and sewage, of course, come in, go out. So that's going to be problems. Emergency services, you won't have 911. They'll run out of fuel quickly. And even if they do have fuel, most hospitals, most EMSs, most fire stations have a generator inside. When I worked at the power company, in case we lost power on the grid, we had a diesel generator that would keep the entire power office where we could, reroute electrical lines and everything else. We could keep it running for 5 days based off the diesel we had in the tank, and we had to test that generator once a month to make sure it would work. And it was an automatic trip. So once there were 5 milliseconds of no electrical current on the system, then that generator would kick in and we'd be on alternative power supply. So like I said, most emergency services, if that happens, if they have a carbureted system and not an electronic ignition system, then they may have up to 5 days worth of fuel. Once that's gone, it's gone. Government, of course, they're going to be totally dependent upon it. They may have some fuel and generators. We just don't know. So he talks about, on page 399, he talks about protecting personal electronics, making sure you have Faraday cages. Chances are that anything that is powered, so if you have a TV plugged into the wall, Remember, that wall is that long wire of antenna, basically. The power pole, getting that from the substation to your house, that's one long wire antenna, gets into the transformer, takes it from 7,200 volts down to 110 volts into your house. And so the current's going to flow right through that down into your house. And so anything that is plugged in is going to catch that energy, and it'll probably burn it. Oh yes, Little Lone Prepper has a very wise comment, and that is that back in when we became, quote, what do they call it, green, or not greener, or uh, um, climate change concerns had us get rid of old carbureted vehicles, and they destroyed most of them during the old cash for clunkers. So they are few and far between. Although I saw a beautiful, beautiful 57 Chevy Bel Air yesterday here in my town. And the guy who was driving it couldn't have been in his 20s. It was meticulous. It was a gorgeous car. I would love to have a 64 Ford Ranchero, which was a car with a pickup truck bed. So it was only a quarter ton, but I mean, it was a gorgeous car. And then Chevrolet at the same time had the El Camino, was the Chevrolet version. It was based off of a Bel Air chassis. I guess I'm just too old. But anyhow, store all your stuff in Faraday cages. If you want, and I won't do it unless you ask me to, I'll give you a link for some Faraday bags you can order on Amazon, and you can put stuff in there. I keep my Geiger counter. I keep my CB radios and my FRS radios, and a solar recharger, and a memory stick, a USB memory stick with all of my data that I've scanned and put to memory. So all that stuff is in a Faraday bag, just in case. So, if my computer's still running, then that USB, I can bring it in, power it up, and I can have all my notes and paperwork and everything else. Other than that, anything else may be eligible for being fried. How's that for a politically correct way of saying that? Okay. So things that he recommends that you have for your disaster planning plan: make sure you have plenty of food, and at least 2,000 calories per person per day. Make sure you have plenty of water, at least 1 gallon per person per day. I'm going to say you might want to have more than that, especially if you have freeze-dried or dehydrated goods, because you're going to need water to rehydrate those. You're also going to need some water for common use, dishwashing, clothes washing. Although for the first couple, until I get a regular water supply going, we're going to be using at Sam's. You can get, they call them food bowls, I believe they are. I call them boats, but if you go to the circus or you go to the county fair, they have these 2-pound and 4-pound, what I call boats. And it's basically it looks like half of an ark, and they'll put a burger and fries in it for you. And so you know what I'm talking about. I've got 2 cases of those, and that's what we're going to use primarily for the first while, so we don't waste any of our water on washing dishes. But you're going to need water for hygiene purposes and sanitation purposes. You're also going to need it for clothes washing. So I have and I'll do a review on my hand washing, on my clothes washing, how I plan on doing that. Make sure you have good shelter. And we've been talking about what you can do to stay warm, especially now that we're in the freeze zone of our stuff. So let me catch up here real quick. So Dragon Slayer, that's a very good question. It depends upon how much of the energy is dissipated by other metal objects that it encounters prior to encountering your vehicle, and whether or not they are in sync, in phase, and polarization with the emission. So chances of a car surviving in a garage are greater than they are if it's parked in the driveway. But to say that, to give you, yes, it will survive, all I can say is it has a greater chance of surviving than being parked out in the driveway. Has a greater chance of surviving if it's parked under a wet tree, because that wet tree will absorb a lot of that radioelectronic emission. Let me see here. We have a whole bunch of older trucks down in the South, especially in the mountains of North Carolina. Yes, and that's very, very true. I would like to have an old Ford. That would be phenomenal. I don't understand it to this day. Ford owns the rights to, in my opinion, the best truck engine in the world, and that's the Cummins Inline 6. And they licensed it in perpetuity to Dodge. And so Dodge had it in their Ram truck series. Then Ram broke off from Dodge. So now Ram has basically a Ford 6-cylinder inline engine that is the best in the world. Now, I don't care for the rest of the Ram vehicle, but it does have the best, absolute best engine on earth, especially for a family pickup truck. Okay, I will do that as soon as we're over tonight. I'll go to the comments and put that in there for you. And don't forget to copy down this because he also has some videos on how you can build your own Faraday cage. So there's an explanation on how to do it here in the book. There are also videos on his channel where you can see how to build your own Faraday cage and protect your things. So let me see. Then he says, make sure you have shelter, light, heating, and cooling. Okay. Now, solar storms, and the best place now, as a matter of fact, I was on a live of his and then switched over here so I could do this live. The guy I follow for solar storms is Suspicious Observers. I think I mentioned that to you. That's where he shows where the Earth in comparison to all the different filters of the sun and the X-rays that are coming off of it and everything else. So, you can tell the different types of solar storms that are hitting the Earth. Right now, we believe, I shouldn't say we, he believes, he's the expert. I agree with him because I don't know that much about it, but he believes that all of this significant earthquake and tornado and volcano activity that we've got going on Earth, it's because of the tug of the solar streams that are coming to Earth via CMEs and how they are having an impact on the magnetic poles. And that shift in concentration of energy is basically sucking, plates, the Earth crust, and causing all kinds of different things to happen. Think of it as how the moon has the effect on the tidal waters. That's what he thinks the sun has an effect on the Earth's core, and it's basically sucking a lot of things to happen. So it's a very good channel. Another one that I would strongly recommend. Here, let me catch up with these real quick. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and through dehydration as well. So basically, if you have an open container of water, how much is that going to evaporate over a period of time? So you're going to lose it through I said dehydration. How much of that you're going to lose through evaporation? Oh yeah, that would be fantastic. Yeah. Yeah, and the C10 was, gosh, back in the 40s and 50s, if I'm not mistaken. What a gorgeous pickup. Um, I I bought a whole house solar protection through EMP, and so that's one of the I'm an affiliate with them. So, and you can use my CWP 10 CWP, yeah, CWP, I think is what it's there, with EMP Shield, and you get $50 off your purchase if you buy any EMP shields. So I bought the whole package, which is it basically are some ferrite rods that I put onto my solar wires. It goes into my incoming panel, so that any major thrust of electricity coming in off of that 7200 volt line through the transformer down to 110, when it hits that ferrite, it's going to blow the wire instead of my distribution panel, so it'll protect everything else on the inside. I also have the same thing on both of my vehicles. So, you can get a vehicle EMP protector, so that basically it's protecting everything that's connected to the battery. So yes, so EMP Shield is my go-to for that. And Dr. Bradley, believe it or not, was on the team that helped develop that. There is a video. He has a video. If you're into it, and if you have something like a Fry's, I think Fry's is out of business now. Radio Shack, I think, is out of business now. You might be able to order the components on Amazon or someplace like that. But he shows you how you can build your own resistors and install those on your lines, and where to install those if you want to do it yourself instead of buying something from EMP Shield. There's the ring. I had a 79 Malibu, and with a 327. I really like the 283 block. I really love the 307 block. The 307 was just a bored out 283. But when they changed the stroke and bored it out for the 327 on the 283 block, I was not at all happy with it. And no, that wasn't a 79. That was a 69. I had a 69 Chevy Malibu. Yeah. Lime green. God, it was ugly. And it had that fake, what do they call it? A tonneau roof, I think it was. It was kind of like, it looked like fake cloth for a roof. I got T-boned, drunk Reynolds red light at 11 o'clock in the morning and totaled the car. Okay, so that's CMEs. And we're talking about solar cycles, and we're in solar cycle 25 now. Oh, I hope you didn't hear that. I believe you're right, Dragon Slayer. He may have his own. Yeah, but you know why it didn't sell in Mexico or any of the Spanish-speaking countries? Piece of trivia. No va means it doesn't go in Spanish. Okay, I don't see the relevance of that, but thank you, Seventh Trumper. Yeah, Dr. Bradley may have his own on his website. I don't remember whether he does or not. I know he teaches you how to do it himself. Okay, Trial by Fire, Chapter 20. And so we're going to, some of the things that he talks about, and these we will do in future Monday nights, is unplugged. As soon as you climb out of bed, turn off your main power breaker. And something you should know how to do for the next 24 hours, operate without any utility power. And then, report back on your experience with that. So I'll give that challenge out here, probably here in a future Monday. Boil order. What do you do when your county or your water provider gives you a boil order? And so how are you going to survive with water? And how long will that last? I think I've said several times, in 1997, our MUD, and a MUD in Texas is a municipal utility district. And so they basically provide our water. So they bring up the water, however, from a river or lake. That's called groundwater, or they pump it from a well, purify it, and then distribute it to the population. So our MUD had both water collection, purification, and distribution, as well as sewage collection and distribution. So they were on what was called Brushy Creek in Austin, Round Rock area, right on the border between the two. And we had a major storm, and an electrical and lightning strike hit our sewage pumping station. So what happens was all the sewage went downhill to our sewage pumping area because we were up on kind of like the side of a hill, and went down into the collection area, and then it pumped over a bigger hill, and then it gravity fed down into the city of Austin's sewage maintenance system. Well, about a quarter of a mile upstream from where our sewage collection system was, they had drilled the hole for our well, our drinking water well. So when lightning struck that, it basically destroyed that pump, and it wasn't pumping anything up to be gravity fed in. So it was overflowing and spilling into Brushy Creek. Well, everybody thought it's okay, it's safe, because the well is a quarter of a mile upstream from where the sewage leak happened. And what we didn't know was there was a fracture in the crust, and it was taking that basic sewage and putting it directly into our wellhead. So we were drinking basically raw sewage, and didn't know it for a day or two. And so we had a family member who was the first confirmed case of cryptosporidiosis in our mud. And that's why I strongly, strongly recommend you get one of these, okay? Because, the two guys that it was a guy and a gal, came from Centers for Disease Control, and they called us, about 9 o'clock, Helen, from the airport, and they came about 10 o'clock to get a stool sample.
I don't remember exactly.
It was late at night. Allison was already asleep, and yeah, I know I'm not supposed to use her name. But anyhow, they came to collect a stool sample. These two looked just like Scully and Mulder from the X-Files. And so they took a stool sample, and then they called us back the next day and they said, hey, the person is confirmed with cryptosporidiosis. You need to get on antibiotics, and this is what you need to do. So it's basically dysentery, a really bad case of dysentery. Don't wish it on anybody. And but anyhow, that's that can cause some major problems. So the boil order dried up. Your water main has been cut off coming into your house. What are you going to do? So that's another case. What are you going to do when you run out of gas? There's a scenario called running on empty. Danger at the door. There's a possibility of bad people being in your neighborhood. What are you going to do to protect your family? Live from your cupboards. Do you have enough food? Do you know how to prepare it? In the eventuality you lose everything and you have to stay inside your house and just cook. Escape. There is more of an ongoing challenge to do a single day or a week, and that is, can you pack up, evacuate your home, go somewhere else, and stay for a day or two, and then come back in case there was something like a fire or some other hazard. And then what happens if there's a fire in the house? And what if there is something in the air? We had a chemical plant about, 5 miles from here burn up 2 summers ago. And we basically had to evacuate for a while as the winds were blowing in our direction because they were toxic fumes. Now, when we lived in Houston, the ship channel, if anything happened at the down in Channel View or down in Texas City or League City or anywhere down that where all the petroleum refineries are, that air would blow and we'd have to wear masks and stuff like that because of toxic fumes in the air. So, and then what are you going to do to get to the shelter? So that's pretty much, we are done with the book. So next week, we're going to start a new book, and the link is going to be in the comments down below. We're going to be doing Angry Americans Decline and Decay, Strategies for Surviving the Coming Unpleasantness. And so he also has a co-author, Alan Kay. A lot of great information on here. I forgot to put his channel up here. So he has a channel. Let me do a Prepper. I got to notice Prepper Dog just put a video out. Let me get to Survival Dispatch. So a great channel, a great place is survivaldispatch.com. This is Angry American's website. And so that's the author of this book. And let me get that here, copy, go back here, create a banner, and then Angry American's website is here. And then he does have a YouTube channel. And if one of the mods would look for that, A American channel, and if not, I'll put it in the in the comments. Whoops. What I do? I can't see any of the comments. There we go. Okay, there we go. Comments. Okay, let me get to where we. Linda, I will tell you, I read incessantly. And then, of course, I'm 70. So, a little bit of it comes from having lived too long. Oh, really? Someday I'll have to tell you about my experience in Paris. And that is fairly true. Yeah, if we apply it very generally, I'm going to agree with you. I have problems with some of the extremists, and especially proselytizing. And my general rule is, if I bring religion up, then it's a free for all. I mean, you can disagree with me all you want to, as long as you do it respectfully. When I'm talking preparedness, I try to focus on preparedness and try not to get religion involved in it. Because my focus is on helping people prepare for what is coming. Would you do me a favor and turn that back on?
Oh, sorry. That was a true accident.
That's fine. But so I try to stay away from religion if the topic is primarily prepping, and I try to keep the two distinct. So I hope you can work with me on that. I will have a tendency to agree with you on your statement, and we'll just leave it at that. How's that? So Linda was asking a question: how do I know these things? 70 years of life. Thank you, Linda. I appreciate that. Hello, Tofu. Do you remember the X-Files? Hello, Tofu. That was back in, 90s. I think it was 97 when we had that happen. So I don't know if they're still on or not, but that was a great show. I understand people have been talking, and I heard something this morning. Evidently, there's a new series called Last of Us. And from what I'm hearing, it's a fantastic preparedness television series. I think it's on HBO Plus, but I'm not 100% sure. But somebody, thank you, Little Lone Prepper. That's a fantastic find. Thank you. But everybody's saying it's a great show. I got to find it. It supposedly is a good prepping channel. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I know life can be challenging. There's a today, Roaming Prepper, one of my favorites, and I interviewed him last night, and hopefully we'll have coffee here shortly. He has some business coming here to Austin area, so he and I are going to get together along with another guy, Triple G Farms, who's from about an hour away from here, and hopefully we can also talk Texas Redleg into joining us. So we got 4 of us that are going to kind of get together for coffee one afternoon. But he's got a fantastic channel, but I'm always late to his because at 3:00 every day, I do the Chaplet of the Divine Mercy. And at 5:00, I do the Rosary. So unfortunately, when he comes on at 5 and I'm doing the Rosary, I have my preference. I have my precedence. Let's put it that way. So thank you, Little Lone Prepper. If everybody would go to that. That is the author of both our fiction book and our nonfiction book that we're doing right now. So our nonfiction is going to be The Decline and Decay, and our fiction is going to be, oh, what did I do with it? Where is it? Oh, there it is. Nope. Yeah, Forsaking Home. So this is his volume, I believe we're on volume 4. Yeah, volume 4 of his series. Fantastic series. Book 11 just came out. I have ordered it. I have it in my possession. He says he should have book 12 out very soon. Another phenomenal series is the Stonemont series by Stephen Smith. He has his 6th volume out for editing right now. I am so far impressed with this one. This is Locker 9 by Franklin Horton. One of our subscribers asked me, hey, Lee, while you're doing these fiction books, how about interviewing Franklin Horton? Because I had just interviewed Chris from Angry American, this guy. I had him on. And Stephen Smith from the Stonemont series has agreed to be interviewed. So somebody said, hey, interview this guy, Franklin Horton. I said, well, I want to read a couple of his books before I decide if I want to interview him and kind of promote him or not. So far, I'm happy. So, yeah, and let me know what you think about it. So, and Canadian Prepper I like Canadian Prepper. He does some really good research. I like his prepping videos more so than his doom and gloom videos, but that's just me. I'm not into doom and gloom type of stuff. I want to look for solutions rather than identifying the problems. Now I realize that you have to identify the problem in order to identify the solution, but I think we pretty much identified all the problems we're going to face. Now it's coming up with the solutions and putting them in a mix. Which is going to hit us first, and to what degree, and could they be, um, a homogenous incident that's happening to us. We don't know. So I just wanted to say, what can I do to help my family survive? And what I'm doing, is that a benefit, something that you might want to do for your family so that you can survive? I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just telling you what I'm doing. And if you like it, if you agree with it, you can do it. If you prefer what somebody else is doing, that's fine. The whole thing is we're in this so we can survive. That's the whole reason. Prepping by Faith is in my top 5 of videos that I like to watch. She just does a very good job, I think. And here's another one of those. She's faith-oriented, and she separates her faith-oriented videos from her prepper videos. And when she does her prepper videos, they're primarily looking at solutions rather than problems. She has done a couple of problem identifications, and they are very well researched. And I really like what she does with those. But yeah, she's one of my top 5. Yes, and that's that whole thing. That's the Dutch that Suspicious Observers is talking about. And the sun or some other electromagnetic influence doing what we're doing. It doesn't. Here's this is going to get into a little bit of theology, and I don't want to necessarily, but I think that you have to understand. A lot of people get caught up in the difference between um, the man's rationalizing of God and our understanding of God. And one of the things that there's a story of Saint Augustine, and Saint Augustine had a dream, and he was walking along the what do you call it, uh, shore, the shore of a large lake, and he noticed a child was digging in the sand And then after he finished digging in the sand, he took the cup he was digging in the sand with and ran over to the lake and took a cup of water and went over and poured it into the hole in the sand. And he did this, and he watched him for about 5 or 10 minutes. And he said, "Boy, what are you trying to do?" And he says, I need to empty the ocean into this hole with this cup. And he said, "Boy, that's crazy. You can't do that. There is so much ocean and such a small hole." And the boy looked at him and said, "That's how it is with God and your mind. There's a whole ocean of God, and your mind is only this small hole. So there's no way all of it can fit in." And he said that's when he understood the magnificence of God and and His presence. And that's how we are. We try to put into human words things that aren't human, and we try to understand with the human mind something that is not human. So that's part of that problem. And I think Explaining by Faith does a very good job of trying to explain that through Scripture on a regular basis. So thank you very much for doing that. Let me see here. I think my chat is frozen too. Went out and back in, and it's at a standstill. I wonder if that's me. Is it me, or is it? Let me see. Hello Tofu says, try and close it and reopen it. And Linda Bob says, yeah, so that worked. Okay, so it looks like that's where we are. So let me kind of wrap this up for you. And then we'll come back to chat one more time. Some of those great channels that I strongly recommend. Of course, Dr. Arthur T. Bradley, the EMP expert for NASA, and his YouTube channel is Disaster Prepper, is his YouTube channel. Another one, this is the guy who's going to do all of your daily solar activity videos and talk about them. So, the solar winds and magnetic charges and everything else. And it's usually about a 15-minute video that he puts out on a daily basis. Dutch Sense is one of two people I go to for information about earthquakes, tsunamis, and volcanoes going off in the world. He, along with Mary Greeley News, Mary Greeley does a lot of earthquakes. She has a tendency to focus on the Yellowstone caldera and the Long Valley caldera, but she'll do it internationally. So I watched her today. She had the vast majority of the reporting today on the 7.8 and 7.5 aftershock, and then the subsequent 7.6. And there's been something like 250 earthquakes or aftershocks after those three, 7.8, 7.6, 7.5. And they think that third one may have gone back up to a 7.8 as far as an aftershock. So they're trying to determine whether it was an aftershock or another earthquake. But do me a favor, pray for the victims in Syria and Turkey. That is devastating and totally unbelievable. One more I would like you to take a look at is there is an app, and it's called Disaster Alert. So, and I have it on, as a matter of fact, I just got it. Oh, as a matter of fact, here's another one. So here's another disaster alert. Let me see if I can show you right there. And so we're going to call that up and see what it is. And it is Tropical Cyclone number 12 has formed in the Pacific. So, with disaster alert, it can keep you up to date, and you can specify whether you want it just for North America or for the world like I have, and that will keep you up to date on all of the disasters that are going on around the world. Okay, so next week we're going to do Decline and Decay, Strategies for Surviving the Coming Unpleasantness. If I'm not mistaken, we may be just doing, that's Forsaking Home. There we go. So we may just do the introduction, and no, let's go ahead and do the introduction, the mental stuff, and the village. So the introduction, chapter 1, chapter 2. And that's going to be a total of about 18 pages. But it is intense. So we'll do the introduction plus the first 18 pages of Angry Americans book next week for our nonfiction book club. And then don't forget also Survival Dispatch is his website, Angry Americans website. And go back to comments here and let's see where we are. And okay, so glad to hear that it worked, Linda. A little lone prepper. And Dragon Slayer's back, and so is Linda, so that's great. Okay, what questions do you have before we close it out? So remember, there is one thing that I want you to think of as you're doing your prepping. Not only should you be prepping for yourself, but there are going to be those around you who are going to come to you. Do what you can as you can. I believe very, very strongly in James 2, verses 14 through 24, and then Isaiah. Oh gosh, let me check here. Isaiah. Because Isaiah says almost the exact same thing that James does. But we've got to take care of our fellow neighbor when they come to us and need food, clothing, and shelter. And so, do what you can. Set aside a little bit extra as you're doing and it doesn't have to be that expensive. You can get a can of Vienna sausage. You can get an extra. You can get some oatmeal. And that's a valid meal. You can get some ramen. That would be something you could give away to help somebody who is in need. But I was talking about. One more page back. There we go. Isaiah chapter 58, verses 7 through 10. And that's basically the precursor to James 2, 12 through, or 14 through 24. So just remember, take care of your fellow man. Remember that we're all in this together so we can come out the other side together. Please be kind, polite, and respectful to each other because togetherness is the key. Take care. God bless you all. Bye-bye.